The session today is a practical session about building out your go-to-market model for 2026. I'm a fan of interactive. I want Dan and I were talking about this earlier. If you do something, you will have more of a behavioral change and a better outcome from the investment of time than if we just sit here and give you some really amazing information you hear it, right? And then you go, that's fantastic. Eventually, it's unlikely you'll do anything with it, is the norm. Yeah, so I'm lucky enough to be married to an associate prof from the National University of Singapore who specializes in pedagogy and andragogy. And self-directed learning is the most effective methodology of changing, yeah, right? So today you're going to be doing stuff, right? There's no, that's what we want from you. The last half hour, we're going to put you in breakout rooms and you're going to build your framework for next year. It is interactive. So if you can get involved with that, it would be really cool. If you can do it, really cool. I know some people like to just listen and switch the cameras off, but the last half an hour is not that, right? The last half hour is all engaging with each other, yeah. So that's fine, yeah. So let me introduce us. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Fraser Morrison. I'm the founder and CEO of 1,000 Steps. We've been around for about 13 years now. We manage business development, outbound lead generation for about 100 companies worldwide. And our job is to manage the outbound piece. We also touch on the sales development piece. And we work with big companies and little companies, and we do all sorts of things. But ultimately what we do is we put our BD model inside businesses. Now, that's relevant because I see what people are doing from a lead general point of view. At the moment, I have view on 100 different companies. Yeah, I can see what's happening, what's working, what's not working. Daniel, and I'm just going to do a quick introduction and then you can actually do your own one, Daniel. But I'm a outbound lead gen guy, right? I'm at this raw, ugly end of outbound. How do salespeople engage with the marketplace? Whereas Daniel is a marketing genius, right? Who sits at the other sophisticated end of lead generation. And maybe you can, and that's why we work well together and enjoy each other's companies, because we both have a passion for this shit, right? So Daniel, why don't you talk about you?
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about you, right? So we know each other now for 12 plus years.
Mm,
For the last 2.5 years, we've been working on 4 projects together. So I think that
mm,
is quite exciting. And we also see the true beneficial things of working together, how
mm,
BD, marketing, and sales really work together well and drive success. So a little bit about the introduction about myself. I've been for 15 plus years in marketing, BD as well as in partnerships. For the past 2.5 years, I've been doing a lot of fractional work. So I come in as a fractional advisor or fractional chief marketing officer, where I basically look at companies and say, okay, how can you improve the whole lead gen part and how can you grow your business? So I've recently done that for a very famous unicorn in Singapore, one of the most successful, Coda Payments. We did in about 10 years, $300 million turnover, 30 million profitability. I used to have my own digital agency, so also 35 people focusing on inbound, right? So a lot on the inbound, not so much on the outbound. And recently I worked also together with Fraser, and Fraser is currently still working them with OSAM, which is basically software, accounting software incorporation of businesses across 4 countries. And we will talk a lot more about that later, how basically AI is changing the game for a lot of things, especially when it comes to inbound. And besides all of that, what I do, and I think Fraser and I had this intensive discussion a few days, what are we going to do with this session? Because we've done now 4 sessions together. And he had a great suggestion. He said, hey, why don't we do a very interactive session? And I completely agree. I've been training since 2017, and we call that also experiential learning. And why is experiential learning so powerful? Because you put things in action. When we see companies put things to action, you see results way quicker rather than listening and giving your piece of advice or some people give you advice and you say, I've done this and this. Once you put it into action, it makes a lot more sense. And that is what I've done with all the companies that you see below here, from big to small companies, focusing on lead gen, really improving the overall business. So yeah, let's jump into what we're talking really about today.
So let me go through this. I've got a little bit of a presentation. I'm going to start to work through, well, workbook, work through the stuff here, right? So okay, so marketing, lead generation, and sales are not going to be the same in 2 years' time, you know. I also believe that marketing, as a general rule, and I'm not saying everybody, right, but as a general rule, marketing doesn't like sales, and sales doesn't like marketing, and marketing and sales don't like operations. So they all sit autonomously from each other, you know. And there has to be a sea change in this, right? Everyone has to work together as we move forward. It's going to come, right? There is no choice here with this. In the business world, there'll be a point in the future where successful companies are able to measure how effectively the three groups work together. But again, look, one of the pivotal changes is AI, all right? And this is not an AI session, right? So don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with AI stuff, yeah, right? You know, because there's just so much going on there, right? But again, I don't see anybody using AI that effectively to generate leads, you know. But when you talk about AI, and I just asked ChatGPT the question, AI generates answers in zero-click searches. It shifts traffic to conversion quality, AI-powered SEO workflows, and greater emphasis on experience, expertise, you know, etc. Right? Harder measurements and attribution. So it basically is going to create this volume of stuff that's going on, yeah, right? That it's going to make it harder for companies to stand out, and the companies with lots of money are going to be able to do it a lot better than the companies that don't have a lot of money. So, for example, if you want AI to pick up you're in an area of expertise, if you've written articles about it and people respond to that, AI will pick that up, but it won't pick up a paid article that people respond to, you know? So how do you get your articles out there, right? And how does everybody get their articles? And, you know, just as a tiny little niche within that world, yeah, right? This is going to be the complexity that we face. My belief is there's another answer, yeah, right? You know, but Reddit, I don't know if you've all seen this, but Reddit had a massive problem last week when they lost $5 billion off their valuation, yeah, right? And that was a change. Google made one change. I mean, Daniel, it's not as dramatic as it sounds, but the point is things can change very, very, very quickly, right? You know, Daniel, you and I were talking about this earlier, yeah.
Yeah, so basically how Reddit got very well known, right, is a user generated platform, or USG, how we say it in marketing language. And basically what Reddit has been doing, it's been indexed by Google as giving
Mm.
all the right answers, right? And then if Google changes their algorithm, all of a sudden you see a massive drop. Because what Google will always wants to do is they want to generate the answers themselves, right? That it can attract traffic to certain pages that the people who are paying for the ads are still getting served. So when Reddit was less indexed, you see this coming back straight away, right? So that has a very big impact on Reddit. And Google will always make sure that their money is growing. So if you look at some of their latest reports, is actually Google has been growing faster than ever, revenue-wise, making the most money than ever. So whatever is going to happen in AI, Google will make sure that it will benefit themselves.
Mm.
And if you want to make sure that you are in the most popular LLMs, right? So just talking about that very briefly, if you want to be in ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and so on, you do need to use tools out there. So I will call out a few that are very commonly used. You can use SEMrush. That's a very well-known one. You can use Ahrefs. Those two I've used in the past, and I had marketing teams who specialize on this, especially if you are in the SMB segment or the mid-market segment. Very important to focus also on prompt engineering, right? How can you show up? And SEO is more important than ever, right? So
Mm.
if you have a very trustworthy website where you write trustworthy articles that are visited very often, and you do a lot of PR, and you have very strong backlinks, it will come back in the LLM, right? When people do
Mm.
certain prompts. So SEO will again be very important. And all of this can also be tracked, right? So the tools that I mentioned, do invest in those. They're not expensive. You can get them for less than $100 a month if you are in this segment. For enterprise, maybe slightly different. But for instance, when I was with Osam, we already had 3 people in SEO who were doing this, and we can see the traffic is increasing massively compared to our paid traffic.
Mm.
And that was just a few months ago.
No, exactly. So again, we're not going down the AI rabbit hole here, right? But as Daniel says, you have to be in it, right? You need to be sitting saying, what am I doing? How am I resourcing it? Where's the knowledge coming from? Um, if we, for me, again, I believe you've got to come back to basics, the fundamentals. So we need to be mastering the traditional methods of marketing. We can't sit there on the side anymore and not understand how SEO is working and how SEO is impacting what's going on around us. But we also need to be engaging with the new tools and think about how we're going to do that. The counter of this is we need to make sure sales and marketing are aligned. Yeah? That means, as an example, you get a lead for sales, it gets engaged within 3 minutes, not an hour, not a day, not 3 days, not 7 days, but 3 minutes. Yeah, right. That appointment's in someone's diary and someone's dealing with it and acting in it. We know you're 400% more likely to close a deal if the lead gets engaged within minutes or seconds rather than days. Yeah, right. Which is days is the norm. Yeah. We need to make sure that if a contact comes in, we're nurturing that on an ongoing basis. Yeah, right. The sales reps need structure around outbound lead generation. I mean, again, I'd come back to this question. Outbound lead generation, a simplistic part of that would be how many connection requests should a sales rep send every week? How many new connections should they add every week on the right marketplace? Who's managing that? Who's responsible? Is it sales director? Is it a marketing problem? Is it a sales problem? Yeah. At the moment, it doesn't happen. The worst personas on LinkedIn are salespeople, closely followed by marketing people, closely followed by HR. So those 3 people do not use LinkedIn effectively at all. There's no brand, there's no content, there's not happening there. Right? They're not doing it. Yeah, they're busy dealing with the model from a different perspective, and that needs to change. And then I'd finish, and I'd come back to your thoughts, Daniel, but I'd finish every single contact that you have accumulated in the past and every single contact you have now should be nurtured as if it was the last contact that's coming into your business. Just because they don't want to buy now doesn't mean you don't engage with them. So what's your model? How do you stay relevant? You know yourself as an example. If you meet someone at a networking event and then you don't touch base with them for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, what happens to the relationship? They forget about you. So if you touch them, you have a meeting on Zoom, even if they can't buy, and you maintain that for 2 years, you become part of their ecosystem. And that's the big sea change that we see happening. Your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, so a few things that I want to share. I think is very important for any business. The moment that they inquiring with you, they can directly book with your sales rep or your SDR or your technical expert. What is very important in whatever CRM that you have, that CRM is directly linked to the to the agenda of your salespeople. Very, very important because and allow those salespeople that always have space within the next 3 days, right? So they can book it so people feel addressed. The second thing, what is very key, especially if your business is a bit larger and international, say you're across 2 or 3 markets, is if you're working in the SMB segment or the enterprise segment, sometimes you see inquiries coming in Friday late afternoon, and these ones won't get addressed until Monday or sometimes until Tuesday. So what's very important is that you have SDR people working certain hours where you see also a lot of inquiries coming in. Usually you can do that too, right? So maybe some people might have to work longer on a Friday night or on a Sunday night. They start working again. Usually not that many inquiries come in, but it's very key to respond very fast to this. Because if you don't respond fast and your competitors do, you will see they will go with the competitors because usually if people want it fast, they're ready to put the money down, right? And that will significantly impact the business. Another thing is that what you can consider when people inquiring, nowadays you have self-service systems where they can buy your product or service almost on the spot, where they can get the various options in. And AI can also help to vet some of the qualification of the quality of the lead, right? So that is also happening quite a fair bit. And if that doesn't work, people can choose, right? I want to talk to somebody. So then maybe a chat agent can take it over, who is a real human. Those kind of things, the urgency in closing things is very important, especially deal sizes usually between $1,000 to $20,000 should be going very fast.
You're right, Daniel. And you know, it's coming back to these basics. It's come back to the simplistic structure. So as you step in, as you're sitting in this quarter now, sitting down, and this session's about planning, right? So we're giving some context here. And I'm not saying AI doesn't have a place. AI does have a place here, right? You know, but it has a place as a tested model. So it's not. I think if I use AI to send 500,000 LinkedIn messages, that's my model, right? If you haven't tested that and you don't know if it's working or not working, and you need that model that you build for next year needs to be built around things that are working, not concepts. Yeah, so you have to prove the model, right? We all, yeah, this is great, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to rely on it for the next 4 months, and then it doesn't work, and then you have to go back to what you were doing 4 months ago and restart, which is another 4 months. So that plan for next year needs to take into account the new things you're going to try, but it also needs to take into account the existing things that you're doing that are working, and how do I make them better? My belief, though, is the big change that you can make that's relatively inexpensive, relatively easy to do, is you get sales and marketing working together. Yeah. Okay. If you get that working and they like each other and they collaborate and you've got this mutual respect, that's where the money is. Right? The money is in the existing people that you actually know, and should be interacting with. So moving forward, sales and marketing working together, yeah, right? And it's very unusual to see that as a norm, right? It's not the norm, right? I get that, like if I work with Daniel, it's easy, right? We're all working together and we're collaborating. But again, if marketing creates a piece of content, you all know the salesperson doesn't distribute that to 500 people, right? The salesperson might do a post, but what if it's good enough to share in an in message? What if it's good enough to go back to that base of contacts that they're connected on WhatsApp? Yeah. What if it's good enough to send their personal contacts an email? The salespeople are not doing that. So how do we get them doing that? How do we make that come together? Yeah, right. How do we make it easy for them and intuitive as you move forward, so that as marketing does what they're doing well, the sales effectively do the same thing. So I've got so let me move this here. I particularly love this slide. All right, it's where most of us that are here today should be playing. With the base marketing axiom that's been around for 40 or 50 years is that 60% of businesses don't have a need or will never be interested in your business, no matter what you do. Yeah, but 30% have a need but don't know they have a problem. AI, SEO, you name it, does not find these people. Yeah. He's a human on a human having a conversation saying, by the way, how are you doing this? And they go, oh, I hadn't thought of that, right? Okay. Because it's the conversation that creates the change. Yeah. Okay. And then 7% have a need but are not actively looking in Google or wherever. Yeah. And then 3% are actively looking. So everybody's fighting over this 3%. Everybody wants the 1 in 33. Yeah. It's 1 in 33. That's why getting an SQL is so hard. Yeah. Whereas if you take this 37% in the middle here and you play in this space actively, which means marketing, SEO, all the different touch points that you can have through marketing, sales doing their bits, and then that management of that whole nurture piece as you navigate forward, that's where the revenue sits. Yeah, it's easy money. Yeah, it is easy money. And LinkedIn works now, right? You know, it works as a platform. Email's getting a little bit harder to stand out, but other parts of email are getting easier. For example, newsletters and so on and so forth. And but when you combine it strategically with each player within your organization doing what they're doing, so as you build out your model today and over the coming period, I wouldn't be sitting saying my salespeople are not doing this, or marketing's not. Sometimes it's the other way around. Marketing's not doing what they're supposed to be doing as well. So this is a two-way thing, right? If I was talking to someone in marketing the other day and said, I hate salespeople. I mean, literally, it was that level of vitriolic communication, right? You know, I hate them passionately, and so this cannot be, right. If that's there, it needs to be fixed quickly, all right, and as you move forward. Yeah. So we'll have a little video that goes with this, and then we'll have the workbook that you've got, and then the deck's pretty basic, yeah. So it's not really that exciting. And then if anybody's got questions, feel free to reach out to any of the three of us, all right, and jump on a call. And yeah, it was really very nice to see everybody. And Daniel, thank you for letting me talk too much. It's your turn next time, right? Take turns, right? Yeah, we focus on a topic, and Will, thank you for last minute coming in and facilitating.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Nothing like getting put at the spot, right? You know, if I knew you'd be fine, yeah, so it's like no problem. So,
thanks, Bryce. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Will.
Thanks,
really
everyone. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Nice to see you all.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for your time.
Fraser, you're amazing.